What's going on, Soul Tribe? I salute the divinity in you, and welcome to my channel, Alchemist. Justin here, and are you ready to work with them lunar shenanigans? Cause this is an interesting week. It starts off really nice. Got this little pocket there with the benefics, and then we kind of smooth into there a little bit. We hit a bit of a rough patch with the moon squaring Mars, and then it kind of flattens out for the rest of the week. There's another little mixed bag of a pocket when the moon comes to conjunct Saturn. We'll get into all that here in a moment. In a moment here, though. But if you're new here, again, my name is Justin, and one of the things that I do in this channel is talk about the lunar shenanigans, and that just goes over the astrology of the moon, what sign it's in, what phase it's in, when it happens to go void of course, and just to get a general feel of the energies through the week as the moon is having these different conversations with the sun and the other planets, and as it distributes its energies, because the moon is being the closest luminary to us, it is the one that really closely affects us. So it's good to always think of with that good old moon. And I'm going to be covering the week of September 30th through October 6th. So yeah, it's like, wow, we're already in October. So let's go ahead and get into this thing here. Because on a Tuesday, the 30th of September, we start off with the moon in Capricorn. Now, the moon is in a waxing gibbous phase right now. Here's the moon right now. And the moon is doing some nice aspects overall. It starts off trining Venus, which is really lovely. And this is a nice little Earth kind of trine that's happening here. And even though the moon's in its detriment right now, technically being in Capricorn, Venus is in its fall right now. This is still very practical energy. I think that can be one where if you need any kind of support from any kind of like friends. Let's say you're building some kind of, let's say you're trying to start a new like workout routine, for example. This could be like kind of teaming up with a buddy, just like, hey, maybe we can meet up on Tuesdays and Thursdays and do something together, that gives us something to look forward to, and we're forming some sort of improvement of life as well. So that's how I could really see that kind of that kind of earthy moon Venus trine that's happening there. And then we get to a square with Mercury. And this could just be where, maybe with that moon trine, you're feeling like you're wanting, more kind of like doing more things that you love. Maybe you're desiring different things. Maybe you want to plan time for a trip. Maybe you're wanting to do things for that. Whatever improvement you're kind of looking for. The moon square Mercury could just be trying to figure out how to make that happen. It sounds like a good idea in theory that Mercury in Libra may be feeling creative, feeling inspired. But then the moon in Capricorn is a bit more serious of a moon. It's not one that likes to get its hopes up. It may take a minute to get started with some things where it's like, yeah, I like this, but what happens if such and such happens? This thing can happen. But I think that's where it kind of comes in when we get to that moon opposing Jupiter, and that's the one I have on this chart here. It happens at it becomes exact about 22 degrees and 29 minutes, moon in Capricorn, Jupiter in Cancer. But this is nice because one, the final aspect is forming is with the Jupiter with his domicile lord, the moon, and Jupiter is exalted here. So this is one where it's like the moon, it may be feeling skeptical, maybe feeling a bit pessimistic, but the Jupiter here, even if it's a hard aspect with an opposition, because that's when the celestial bodies are, as you can see here, on opposite signs from one another. Even though the moon may be feeling all that, Jupiter's still trying to bring this sense of, but what happens if things do change? Because it always does with the moon. With how the moon fluctuates, it's always a reminder that things can get better, things can improve from there, even if there has been a bit of challenging energy maybe that's coming up. So that's just something to kind of pay attention to as we start off the week. But I like that there's this opportunity for hope here, and I feel like not just a sense of like feeling, that, but actually making tangible results there with this earth energy. So something to work with as we're kind of getting into this thing here. Because right before, on a Wednesday, now we're into October, happy October, and we're October 1st now, the 2025, and before the moon moves into Aquarius, the moon is going to form a sextile with Saturn, which, it's ultimately nice, when we're thinking about that. It has reception with its domicile lord while the moon's in Capricorn, and the sextile energy creates opportunity. They're like the trines. The trines are the most beneficial aspect. They create this flow, this ease, this just everything's just breezy with the trine. The sextiles is a similar vibe, but just a little bit weaker. They require a bit more initiative with this. So, we were thinking about Venus improving things, Jupiter having this, keeping that sense of hope. But now it's like, okay, taking those feelings and putting in the work. Like Saturn's like, all right, yeah, like I'm with that, but you have to stay with this thing consistently if you want to have any sort of long lasting impact with this. So it's like with working out. You don't just work out one day and then you're fit for the rest of your life, even though that would be lovely. But with this one, this is, I think, a reminder with the moon sextiling Saturn that, it's just taking these small little steps. It doesn't even have to be anything super big with the sextile. Taking that, maybe maybe you want to change up your diet. Maybe you're wanting to make more time for your family. Maybe you're wanting to make more time to travel, make more time to read, go make more time for school. To incorporating those little pockets of time every day, and consistently keeping that'd be a nice thing to initiate with the moon in Capricorn and then carry into the moon in Aquarius, because the moon's going to enter into Aquarius at about 12:51 p.m. and that's going to be Pacific time. And I like when the moon's in Aquarius, because now we've gone from Saturn's earth sign to Saturn's air sign, and it's a fixed air, and it's active or yang in nature when we're talking about Aquarius. And so this could be getting that idea of that long game that we're going to have to play with Saturn, and making that turning. I find Aquarius, that's a great energy for doing like a vision board, for looking into the future, for thinking about those things, to keep your eye on the prize with them. Because Aquarius, I find with them, I think that they're a sign, if you can hold it in your head, you can hold it in your hand. And, there's a strong manifestation with them, to be able to find that higher sense of self, that we were seeking from that Jupiter being exalted. Be able to, Aquarius, I almost think that has that penetrating mind to see past the secrets of Saturn, to see beyond the veil, to see beyond, to see brighter, better futures for oneself. So, and this is one too I would pay attention. Oh, and here's the moon in Aquarius if you're looking at the chart here. This is something where if you have a lot of placements like myself in fixed signs, and that's going to be Aquarius, Taurus, Leo, or Scorpio, this period may be a bit more active for you there. So that's something to just kind of pay attention to as well. But yeah, nice little energy too. And this is something where we're going to get into the next energy, because I was just like looking at Mars, looking at Mars, because here he comes on a Thursday, the 2nd of October. Now the moon's moving through Aquarius, and it's going to form first that aspect with that square with Mars. Now, Mars is the lesser malefic. It's a challenging energy, and it's very different from Saturn, where Saturn will have you feeling sluggish and feeling lazy, feeling unmotivated, feeling just blocked. Mars will have you feeling just not just like this hopelessness, but feeling angry about it. And then that's how things get reactive, and then we end up taking that, because maybe there's, let's say for example, we're getting ready to initiate whatever this thing is, making these changes, and then that Mars things happen. Something gets in the way of that good feeling. We just had that thought locked in, and then you get some sort of like, the car breaks down, or something gets, there's some kind of fraud thing that's happening with the accounts, or any sort of thing, get bad news from someone. It's someone cuts you off. Like Mars can have you're feeling reactive, and then that energy just like it ripples effects, when we're thinking about that. All it takes is just one person having one bad day and spreading that around, and that can spread fast. And then, then you carry that with you, and it's different now in this energy, because now Mars, it's in its domicile of Scorpio, and where it is strong in Scorpio, Mars in Scorpio is nice. I don't know about you, but like I said, I have a lot of fixed placements. I'm good on Mars and Scorpio. Right as I'm looking at that square that's happening very close to my Mars is coming in on my Mercury placement. I'm staying inside. But that would be something to just kind of check the feelings that you're holding with you, and see how how just a little minor thing can affect the whole flavor of the day. And I think that what this day is not meant to just be just a wrench in the day, because there is a chance here with the moon trining the sun. That's the aspect that I have here, that would between the sun in Libra, moon in Aquarius. This could be, though, where maybe you're feeling that frustration, you're feeling whatever that thing that Mars is. instead of letting it be something destructive, maybe taking it out on a friend or a wall or whatever that's looking like, take that being it's like, okay, how can I get back in the flow of me? Maybe I need to take this anger and maybe I need to go for a walk. Maybe because I find what can happen with Mars too, if it feels that those energies and it feels trapped, that's where it's like it's almost like a wild animal in a cage. So I think that would be one where get outside. Whenever you feel flare ups of Mars, go for a run, go for a walk, go by something that, especially with Scorpio, go by if you have like maybe moving water available around you, like a river or something, or just pull that up on a laptop. Get something that gives you in that flowing energy. Find some dark chocolate. I'm always a fan of that. When you get stuck in the emotions, I might get some today. But just something to think about with Mars. I bring that up. We even though there's all this flow and things like that, and you can work constructively with the malefics. No one's looking forward to a square with the heart with the malefics. It's still a challenge. When we're talking about the moon square Mars, but it gives us one, I think, to just kind of catch ourselves. Before we do things that have initiate things from, again, just tough emotions and hot emotions, intense emotions, coming from a more balanced place, kind of tapping to that sun, that's kind of sun in Libra there, not to, kind of come back to equilibrium. So just something to think about there. And then as we carry this over into Friday, the 3rd of October, before the moon moves into Pisces, the moon's going to form a trine with Mercury. And that's what I think is nice too. So, we had that kind of tough day with Mars. Whatever happened, maybe some sort of like news comes in for the that comes in, whatever that may be. But now this could be where it's like, okay, this thing has been presented. What action can I take? What makes sense right now? What maybe this could be a great time for some brainstorming with the moon trining Mercury. The thoughts are flowing. This is a good time and even just a good time, I think, especially if you've been feeling a lot of heavy mental energy. Maybe you've got a lot of air or something like that with this. This could be just something to help get those thoughts out there. Journal these things if you don't have maybe if anyone to talk with. Maybe these are thoughts that are happening, at wee hours of the night and things. And so if you don't have anyone at that moment, even just writing some things could be really kind of nice there, just to get your thoughts grounded. Because sometimes I think seeing what's going on in the head makes it easier to grapple with that. It's like, oh, I've been noticing this has been a dialogue here. I've been maybe whatever that might look like. So I do ultimately like a moon in when the moon is trining Mercury. That just it gives like the thoughts and the feelings are on the same page. And I think this gives a time, an opportunity to see that when we go through these hard aspects, even if it's that, say, that moon square Mars wasn't something that impacts you, like I said, that's coming up. Mars is now, in this chart, Mars is just separated, like about 40 minutes now separating from my Mercury placement. But Mars has been working my chart for sure. And so that's something where, to remember that there are other people with other placements going through these things. And it's like, well, maybe not to excuse the behavior that they may do. That's not to say that, but it's more so to be like, oh, well, that guy that that may have cut me off or whatever that may have happened. Maybe maybe this Mars one's working on him too. And I know what that feels like. And I wish you love and light. Good luck with that one. But let's get it together. And that could even be too, if this is someone close to you. Maybe this is happening, to be able to create this dialogue where it's just like, hey, where I understand that you may be something, go processing something. You've been on one. You've been on one, and let's just get eyes on that. If you need some more time, like, help me help you. But you can't be in the space where you're just throwing energy around, because that affects everyone. So that's something just that, that might not even be you. That could just be checking, the people around you. So something to think about there with the moon trining Mercury. And we're keeping the trines going. This is really nice, because then, oh, wait, hold on. Let me go back a little bit. Before we get into that, afterwards we have that lovely little conversation, then the moon moves into Pisces, and that's going to happen at about 7:07 p.m. and that's, again, that specific time. And I like the moon in Pisces. This is where, and here's the moon in Pisces on the chart here. And I like this too because now, granted, the moon's co-present with Saturn, which is meh, but it's also in this great mutual reception with Jupiter. It's in the, and it has that sort of sign-based aspect trine as well. So that's really nice, when we get into the moon and when the moon in Pisces. And Pisces is traditionally ruled by Jupiter. They're the mutable water sign, receptive or yin in nature. And I find that when we allow ourselves, I think with Pisces, for example, to hold space for another person to kind of see what it's like to be in their shoes. And again, it just helps us to see, and it helps us to imagine, like, okay, how would I want to talk with myself when I'm going through this time, or how do they need to be dealt with? Like, I think there's that empathy that comes through with Pisces. There's a mercifulness, I think that Jupiter gives to Pisces, that helps them to, like, I get what you're feeling through. Now let me help you move through that. Let me help you change that into something better, as opposed to just being just kind of wasted emotions. Let's channel those things into, you're feeling these things, let's create something with that. Let's create a stronger union. Let's create a project, whatever that's looking like. And then kind of moving into Saturday. Oh, and this is something too, if you have a lot of mutable placements, that's going to be Pisces, Gemini, Virgo, or Sagittarius, then this may be a more active period time for you. But then we get into Saturday, the 4th of October. Moon's still chilling in Pisces, where Moon's getting closer to that, getting full. And the Moon is trining Mars. And like I was saying, we got all these nice little trines that are happening here. And this could be where, we're at a few days ago, Mars was really kind of challenging us. And now this is where it's like, okay, we felt what that tension can be like. We felt it when the moon was conjunct Mars, and now we felt it when it's square Mars. Now this gives us a chance to, when the moon goes to oppose Mars, we have a better idea of what a hard aspect is with it, and we can flow better with it, and this can be an opportunity to start to incorporate some buffers or some things that can help you from, again, if you find yourself getting stuck in the emotions sometimes. So this could be where it's like, if you find with anger, for example, then getting like a punching bag, or getting like a stress thing, something, something you can channel that energy into. Maybe it's going for a swim. Maybe it's taking a cold shower, whatever that is. Maybe it's making a cold beverage. But this moon trine Mars is more constructive, and it's I think that Mars brings focus, and then whatever we're wanting to focus on changing with that moon in Pisces, it can become a lot easier, it can become a lot smoother, and it can become something that we feel more capable of tackling, when the moon is trining Mars. It doesn't feel as scary with Mars. It doesn't feel as, like as hopeless or things like that when we're talking about with Mars. Maybe that voice that maybe was trying to deter us, to tell us that we couldn't do the things, we can see through that Martial shenanigans now. It's like, no, Mars, you just lying. I see you. So that's just something to think about with the Mars trine. Now here's another busy day. Now we get to Sunday, the 5th of October, and right before the moon enters into Aries, the moon's got a pretty jam-packed day going through as it goes through Pisces. Now, the moon is first going to form an opposition with Venus, and that's a nice aspect. Even though the hardest aspect with the benefics is no aspect at all, because then there's no sort of support coming from them. So this could be where, maybe with that Mars trine, where we've been feeling more courageous, ready to, let's say for example, if there was some sort of tension in like a relationship, this could be where that moon opposing Venus is just like, hey, I know I've been on one, and I want to make this right. I want to be able to, like, can we talk about the things that I've been processing, kind of help you put me in my shoe, put you in my shoes, and help me kind of move through this. That would just be one example, I think, of a Venus opposition. Or this could just be where, again, when we're feeling like, something is off, this could be where, that Venus is like, let's take responsibility, take the ownership, but also let's not just leave it just damaged. We can move that Venus in Virgo, I think, can mend things where things can be mended. It depends on what's going on here. But then the moon trines Jupiter. That aspect goes exact, and that's really great too. A trine with the greater benefic. This could be, if we were able to, and this could be where, if we got through any tensions, we get through these things together. That feeling when you know that you got your people that can ride with you even through those tough storms, when they're going through tough storms, when you're going through tough storms. Those are the alliances that you keep for life. Those are the people that you want to hang around you, because they're the ones that you can count on, and that they know that they can count on you. You know what I mean? And so I really like that energy there. But then there's a little bit of tension. That's why I call this a mixed bag, because that moon is going to complete that aspect with Saturn, that conjunction. And when you have that conjunction energy, that's when there's a fusion of the energies. Those feelings, the things of the moon that is coming in with that weight, that sluggishness, those hindrances of Saturn. And what I can see this as is, if there are things that aren't being resolved, or that aren't being maybe talked about, or that are being dealt with, whether it's in relationships, maybe something in health, maybe something with home, if there's something that you're putting off, because there's something here with that, there's a lot of goodness that's being presented here, a chance to make amends, to make something right, to get something moving in a different direction. But if because otherwise, this aspects with the benefics can just be just kind of feeling like a pretty easy day, be kind of feeling nice. But I think if there's not any intentions behind it, those things that maybe you've been ignoring, that you've been, maybe that you've been not necessarily maybe keeping secret from others, but those things that have been maybe brewing, there's some kind of long-term things that's happening with the moon squaring Saturn. So this could be like, for example, if you don't take care of, like, let's say the doctor advised you to do some health things, and then you don't do that, maybe you have still some cheat days and things, that's gonna have some problems down the line. Or let's say, maybe there's something with finances that are happening, but you gotta wait for the, and it's a number of things, and I know that circumstances, but this could be a chance to, with that opposition and that trine, to ask for any sort of help, especially with any sort of things that you may be carrying with you, that Saturn's been that's been holding you down, that's been hindering you, and whatever that's looked like. Maybe it's been dealing with some kind of addiction. Maybe it's dealing with some sort of home, financial struggles. Maybe something with parents. I mean, you can, again, apply it to the situation, but this would be just something to pay attention to. Sunday just seems, there's something interesting there, because there was a similar feel when there was that Mars opposition, and there was this nice little pocket. So, we got a lot of, the energies have been interesting for these next couple months. So, but then the moon moves into, after all of that, after kind of processing those things, the moon moves into Aries, and that's going to happen at about 9:47 p.m. And again, that's Pacific time. And this is taking all of those things that maybe we've been feeling, that we've been processing, that maybe we've talked about. This is, where do we go from here? That moon in Aries, because here's the moon in Aries at 0 degrees. And so where do we initiate from here? What does that look like going forward? Because Aries is ruled by Mars. They are the cardinal fire sign, active or yang in nature. So this would be, with that moon in Aries, that can be invigorating. That could be bringing new life to things. That can be starting just kind of like a clean slate. Whether it be with others, with yourself, however that looks. But I think that moon in Aries is wanting to do something. And I think it's paying attention to, again, with the moon. If we're all moving with this sense of intention, the energy shifts. So, I think that's something to be mindful of. But the more active that we're involved in this, the more that we can shape this reality here. Because then we get to Monday, the 6th of October, and then we get to the full moon, and that's gonna last thing here. And this whole story's been building up to this full moon, and there's something about this feels active, like there's this buildup that's been kind of happening here. And so, when we get to the full moon, again, that's happened at 8:47 p.m. Pacific time, And that's here is happening at 14 degrees and 8 minutes. And this is something too, if you have a lot of cardinal placements, that's Aries, Cancer, Libra, or Capricorn, this may be more active period for time for you, especially if you have something around like 14 degrees where the full moon's happening. But this is where the moon reaches its maximum light. And this is where it's interesting too, because when you think about it from a sense of just like the sun being the that sense of authority, the king, and then the moon representing kind of like the queen, the masses and things. There's some kind of there's a tension point between what has been decreed and what has been expected. Maybe with this moon here, there's that always that sense of the this is a time to look into what's happening, I think, in the collective. This is a busy time for all of us, whenever the moon's full. That's something, whether people follow astrology or not, whenever there's something off, there's usually things like, oh, is there a full moon going on here? So there's that consensus. And so I think with this full moon here, this cardinal full moon, paying attention to how we initiate, paying attention to our thoughts with that sun in Libra, and the things that are driving us, that are fueling us, that inspire us with that moon in Aries. I think that that's something that's important to, kind of carry through there as we move into that kind of full moon there. And then that pretty much wraps up the week, so that's something to think about, as we're going into this chunk here before the full moon, and then get ready to shift over into the waning half of the lunar cycle. Be mindful, or just kind of be aware, of just like how you get, how the collective energy stirs you, whether that be being out and about or that being on the internet, because that's collective energy too. So, and just looking at this too, with that chart there, Mercury just entered into Scorpio, and so now there's that Mercury Mars conjunction that's building up, and I'll be talking about that more. I'll actually, depend when this is coming out. I think I'll have released. No, it'll be coming out on the 30th. So I'll be talking about more. I'll be going over this in Celestial News Weekly when I'm talking about the Mars Mercury conjunction. But yeah, with Mercury being in Scorpio now, we want to be mindful of where we're communicating from. And there's more water in the mix, so we're more attuned to one another. We're able to sense more from others. So just something to be aware of as we're kind of moving through this week there. But overall, especially that beginning of that week, I think that that's a great time to think about something, areas that you want to reset, that you want to want to change and want to improve in any sort of way there. And then, just be aware of the little hiccups that are going to be coming along the way. There's still going to be some things happening, but we got this. But, if you want to see how this is working with you more personally, down in the description box, whether it be working with your natal chart, seeing what kind of transits are coming up, or if this is understanding, if you want to plan any sort of like elections, whether that be for planning a wedding or doing a flight, or if you want to, like plan a vacation, or if you want to buy a home, whatever that's looking like for you. Down in the description box is a link to book a consultation with me, so definitely check that out. And then there is also a link to, or my email's down there, so if you have any questions about the services that I provide, definitely check that out. And when this is actually be coming out, I'll have created a link for my Patreon that I've just created, where I host a monthly podcast on there. It's called the Lucky Day Podcast, and it goes over the auspicious days and the elections for the most auspicious elections for each month there. And I offer a couple of tiers. One's for the podcast, and the other one is to get a personalized transit report from me, and that includes like a video recording, a little write up there, and just like in like a PDF of the list of the transits that are going to be coming up for you. It gives you all sorts of tools there for you to get a snapshot of the weather to come. So all that's available for you. The link down there for Patreon is down there. And then there are some links for Celestial News Monthly, which talks about the sun and where the other planets are transiting, what signs are going to be most affected, and how to most practically work with those energies. So all sorts of goodies down for you to check out down there. But until next time, stay mindful out there. You keep eyes on that moon, especially now that it's full. And I'll catch you, and I will catch you. Oof. Let's get out of here. on the next one. Later.